Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Pam, and I met Pam a couple of weeks ago, and she is, as usual on the Thriving Adoptees podcast, she is a lady with a hell of a lot of experience and a hell of a big heart. So you are in for a treat. Pam, welcome to the show.
Hi, Simon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
As I said those words, I thought I'm actually beginning to sound like I'm hosting this, like a TV show that's being watched by millions of users, millions of viewers all across the world. I'm suddenly deciding, am I overcooking this? Is this a little bit too professional, a little bit slick? Today is about the content and about you and what you've learned. So could you introduce yourself to the listeners, please?
My name is, like you said, Pam Sweetser, and I'm the Executive Director of Heritage Camps for Adoptive Families. We're based in Denver, Colorado, in the U.S., and we are 30 years old. I am the founder. Actually, another woman started a camp 30 years ago, a Korean heritage camp, and my family went. My daughter, who was born in Korea, was 5, and my son, who was born in India, was 2. My husband and I trotted up to the mountains to do camp. And then about 2 years after that, this woman moved to California, and I had already started the Indian heritage camp because our son kept saying, I'm Korean too, because he got such a sense of belonging at that Korean camp, even as a little 2-year-old, with all of the other kids and families that were like his. And my husband and I said, yeah, we probably should fix that. So he doesn't think he's Korean. So we had started that camp with a group of families who adopted from India. And then she moved, and it sort of, so I said, sure, I'll do Korea camp and India camp, thinking that'd be it forever. So 9 camps later in 30 years, here we are. And we have, we serve adoptive families with kids who've been adopted from all over the world, including right here in the US. Most of our camps are transracial in nature because the whole purpose of the camp, is to provide that heritage, that cultural knowledge, awareness, pride, experience, whatever you want to call it, for an adoptee, because we as adoptive parents, and the vast majority of us are white, we can give them all the love and tennis lessons and schooling and vacation. I mean, we can give them everything they need, take care of their health, take care of loving them more than anything in the whole world, but we can't give them their culture because we don't share it with them. So every once in a while having kimchi at home doesn't really cut it. And the reason it doesn't really cut it is because then I'm just this white lady handing her kimchi and saying, hey, this is the food from your culture. To me, that's very nice, and it should be done. I mean, I'm nothing against that. But to me, the most important part of the camp's experience is what the kids gain from people who are like them, who do come from Korea, India, China, wherever it might be, African American, Latino, the whole thing. Those role models and those cultural racial mirrors are by far the most important part of our camps. And it's taken a while. I mean, it took us probably 5-6 years into the Korean camp before we really got full support from the Korean community in Colorado. And now we have, when you go to that camp, you feel like you're in the mountains in Korea because there are so many Korean people. Some of the other camps, like our Indian, which is now Indian Nepalese, or our Filipino, which is now Southeast Asian, we've had to mesh camps together or add people to it, I would say. Those communities jumped on immediately. They couldn't wait to share their culture and be with our kids. But it takes a while. There's some distrust. There's some, why did you adopt our kids? What are you really doing? What is this all about? But the minute they come to camp, they realize what it is all about. And that these are parents who are earnestly trying to give something to their kids that they can't give personally. So, we have counselors, all the counselors, many of them are adoptees themselves and came up going to camp. And some of them are community members who, aren't adopted, but they feel just as strongly about our kids. And then all the people who teach and entertain and, cook for us, the whole thing. It's just a very important part of it is to give that piece of themselves to an adoptee. I always say there's like, or I've heard this, I guess, is when you're adopted, there's a hole in your life. It just is. It doesn't matter where you're adopted from. It doesn't matter how old you were. There is a hole in your life. And that hole is your very identity. Like, who am I? And you can fill that hole here and there as you start to learn who you are, what your interests are, what you want to do in life, where you shine, where you don't. Yeah, of course, everyone develops their own identity, no matter if you're adopted or not. But that adoption piece, that whole of where did you come from, is missing. It just is. So what the purpose of the camps is to try to fill that hole with some of those pieces of, like I said, heritage, culture, race, where you come from. We can't fill the hole of who were your birth parents and, all of that. You can, that is something that many adoptees, as you know, Simon, do on their own or with their families. But we can prep them for some of that even. My daughter lived in Korea teaching English after college. And the one thing she said to me was, there were a lot of adoptees. Korea is very open to adoptees coming back. And they make it very easy with visas and all the stuff they need. They make it easy to come back, which is a great thing. I don't think there's another country quite like that. And she said, if I hadn't had all those years of camp, some of the adoptees arrive and they've never had any. They have no idea what Korea is. And it's very unsettling. And some of them just can't handle it. And they had to leave. She had a roommate that just literally almost had a nervous breakdown because it was so foreign to her. And she so felt like she didn't fit in. And my daughter sort of like, I've been doing all this stuff and being around these people and even listening to the language for so long that it didn't feel uncomfortable to me. So that was always, I always felt like that was a good thing, because she felt like she belonged in some sense. Certainly not like as if she'd been, raised there, but she felt like she belonged. And that was a really good thing. So that's the whole point of what we do.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there. Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is an immersive experience,
right,
that creates a sense of belonging,
right, of fitting in. You know what else too, Simon, is the fitting in. We think of adoption as a culture of its own. There's as you certainly have learned with all the work that you're doing, there's a commonality that just comes from being adopted. That's also, we have it's funny because we have certainly have adoptive parents who are adopted. And I always feel like they have kind of an advantage over me or my husband. We're not adopted. We both have adopted siblings, interestingly enough, and his mother's adopted, but we're not adopted. So we don't have, though we have had it around us and in our families forever, we don't personally experience what is it like to not know your birth family, to not know your first family, as I think you're calling it now. But I do think that the kids, when they come to camp, they also get that, because I've heard so many, and over the years, so many kids that say, the parents will tell me, yeah, we went back to the lodge in the evening after camp, and my son said, Mom, did you know all these kids are adopted like me? And it's a cute, I mean, they're like 7, 8 years old. They're like, wow, I'm not alone. My sister, who's white, but adopted, she's told me that, she thought she was the only adopted person in the world. I mean, it wasn't talked about back then. It wasn't, I mean, she kind of looked like my parents, so it wasn't really, a big thing. And that she wished that wasn't so, that she had known that there were other adoptees, that she wasn't this kind of fish out of water type thing. So that, I think, is a big thing that the camps, that piece of it too, again, kind of helps to fill that hole, or at least brings that sense of, I hate this term, but normalcy, to being adopted.
Yeah. There's so much, well, first off, I was adopted, like your sister by
Right.
by a white parent, and as a 5-week-old kid, so 5-week-old baby. So there's layers of complexity that come with age. There's layers of complexity that come with race. There's layers of complexity that come with the international nature.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it all becomes very complicated.
It can be very.
It becomes very complicated, and I've had a huge breakthrough by realizing that I didn't think I had a hole. I didn't think you referred to it as a hole, and I didn't have one. I didn't have an adoption related hole. I had in my 30s. In my 30s, I had a business related hole.
Oh, yeah.
And also a little bit in my 40s, and it's still kind of a little bit there sometimes. So sometimes, right? So I think so. I'm running this I'm running this podcast. I'm doing this to share my stuff with the world, to share other people's perspectives with the world, because I believe that bringing different perspectives to the listeners may shift their perspective for the better, so they can help their adopted kids thrive. And if they're adoptees listening, they can thrive, right? So my whole thing is about perspective. But I'm doing some training in the US and with different people on this. But I'm still I'm living off money from other sources, right? And that cheeses me off. Yeah, that's a bit of my business. That is still a bit of my business.
Or the hole, huh?
Yeah. So, but I don't have an adoption hole. But the reason I'm laughing about it making complicated, and I'm just thinking that sounds really heartless as you're laughing, is that kind of like we all want a sense of belonging. We all want to fit in.
Yes.
Everybody. This is not adoption. Adds another layer of a layer of complexity to that. But most, we look at teenagers. Look at teenagers wanting to become goths or wanting to become emos, do they call them, and all these different. Look at mental health bandwagons. Like, everybody wants to jump on them, everybody wants to fit in. We're all looking for a sense of to seek to fit in is human.
Yeah, it is.
It's
to find your place.
We're looking for a sense of belonging. And the more, we were talking about this before we started the recording, but the more we focus on the difference, the more we're going to feel that we don't fit in. The more we focus on what brings us together, the more we'll be brought together, won't we?
Well, to me, and I guess that's where, what I've seen in my own children and other teenagers, for sure. Again, it's that sense of belonging and what I think what kind of happens. And unfortunately, we've had to do the camps virtually the last 2 years, but back in action next year. When you see them together, is that difference kind of goes away for the time that they're at camp. And then for so many, it sort of stays away to some degree because now they've made connections with people who are like them. So again, that sort of puts them in I do belong, I'm not different category. Okay. Look at this. I'm not as different as I am when I'm sitting in school and I'm the only Asian kid, brown kid, black kid in the classroom. Yep, then I'm different. And, as I said to you, I think so much of the differenceness that's going on, in this world is people that are black, brown, women, disabled, all kinds of different things. There's an equality factor that they seek and should have for real. And at least in our country, I'm not sure we've ever reached that. And after a lot of what we went through this last year, that is becoming, it's at the forefront and should be at the forefront. And so I think, I don't know how that impacts. I mean, it does impact our kids for sure. I mean, we've had all this anti-Asian hate stuff going on here. And, I think especially for adoptive parents of Asian kids, it's sort of like, whoa, wait, my kid is a minority. Oh, really? Because a lot of times I think they adopt and think, well, they're Asian and they don't have to deal with what a black child does or a brown child does, but they do, maybe not to the same degree, but they do. And that's become such an eye opener for parents and, a learning experience.
There's two things there. And maybe I'm just being hyper left-brained, rational things that I can look down and from my perspective, we've got rights. You're talking about rights, but we're also talking about belonging.
Rights and recognition.
Right. Yeah. Rights and recognition and belonging.
Right.
Now, to what extent are they separate, and to what extent are they related?
You mean rights and belonging?
Yeah.
Well, rights, I think, are on paper, and to some degree, like, oh, now we all have our, all the companies have their, diversity, equity. I don't know if that's over there in the UK, but it's, big deal here now that your company has a diversity, equity, inclusion policy, or even a diversity, equity, inclusion person who manages the policy, and it's all nice, all on paper, and there's lists of what needs to be done. And we have it too. We have a statement about, inclusivity and belonging and all that. But it's, you got to put the pedal to the metal. And, is it really working? Is it really making people feel that sense of belonging and inclusion? It's really sort of, I see some of these things. And I think, okay, this looks a good statement from some big company. But are they really doing that? How many people do they really have in management of color? How do they treat the people of color? I mean, it's just an interesting, I hope that there will be a day when actually it does mesh, but I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a lot of nice words on paper, but I'm not real sure that we've reached that sense of true equality and belonging in the workplace and everywhere else. I just don't think we're quite there yet, but we're I think those rights are being addressed, certainly better than they were even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But now we got to really put it in action.
Yeah.
So maybe you're better at that over there. I don't know.
I don't know. I get the sense from this isn't my zone of expertise, but I have actually. I did some work with one of our Paralympian gold medalists. Now, here's the thing. This is when the things start to get alarm bells go off, right? So this lady she won a gold medal at the Paralympic Games in London in 2012, and then they changed the rules.
So
and she was no longer disabled enough.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So some
I had not heard that. That's something.
This is the International Olympic Commission that did this.
Yeah.
So it's not, we're talking international, we're talking about global, we're not talking about UK or US. So apparently there was some, and this is what I heard, right? So it may just be, it may be a fable, it may be completely made up, but somebody, they did some, they had some focus groups, they were talking, and people were saying that the audience were saying that the people weren't disabled enough. They couldn't see their disability. So they decided to change the rules. So I think the whole thing is a little bit, yeah.
So she wouldn't qualify to participate again, is what you're saying. Oh, that's something.
So there's
something.
There's box ticking, and there's there's the difference between equality at a legal level and the sense of, you said it was on paper, so belonging is a feeling, isn't it?
It's a feeling, right?
And rights are on paper.
Rights are on paper.
Rights are on paper.
In an organization, a company, it has to be that belonging thing.
Yeah.
It has to. The company has to embrace that. Like this is we just wrote this thing on paper, but now we're going to embrace it in real life. And I just worry that there hasn't been enough of that. There hasn't been enough change for real.
Yeah.
Oh, we wrote this all down. This is swell. And now, oh gosh, done. And are they really, making that difference and making, it has to be kind of it has to be that sense of belonging for all that's real, not just on paper.
It's a fascinating area area, and I've got some thoughts on it. I'm sorry, I talked over the top of you then.
Well, that's okay. I just said it has to be like the climate of the company needs to change.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's happening as much. Some I think totally it is, but maybe not others.
Can I bring it back to adoption?
Yeah, let's do
that.
Because it's not my area of expertise either. I don't run a big company, so I don't know. It's just the things that I've seen and heard, and actually some of the, our young adult adoptees, some of the things they've been through in the workplace, and feelings that they've felt. And you talked about white privilege earlier before we came on, and a lot of an issue that happens with adoptees that have grown up, or people who've grown up with the white family and often in white communities, is that you're right, maybe they don't feel that whole. Then they go out in the world and all of a sudden, geez, I'm Black and I have to deal with being Black, and I don't have that community, that privilege, who know me as the so-and-so's kid, who they're white, so the kid must be, Now I got to be in the world as a Black person, a brown person, an Asian person, whatever. And I don't know how to do it. So again, those are some of the tools we try to provide for our kids, our teenagers, our tweens and teens at camp.
So I'm just having a coughing fit.
Yeah, or I was going to say, it was allergies.
I don't know what happened there. Interesting point. We had, as I mentioned, a chap called Isaac Etta that we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and released his black guy brought up by white parents, adopted by white parents, and he felt that he struggled. Like his parents did the best by him, but they struggled in that area. They struggled in that preparation area.
Sure.
So what is it that you've learned through personally and through the camps that you'd like to share, because with the listeners? Because obviously we're talking about the camp. We people listening to a podcast, we can't magically give them the camp experience and help their kids get their camp experience on a podcast. It isn't possible.
No.
So
No.
what can we do? What can we do? We can share what you've learned. Sorry?
They can come to camp next year.
They can come to camp.
Yeah, the thing is that because we have adult adoptees that come all the time, either they're counselors or they're volunteers, or we've even had adult adoptee programming. So we do a lot of that. But anyway, and certainly parents. But I think that the one thing that I've learned just from all of the interactions I've had with parents and adoptees, it's those that actually listen to each other that do the best. And what I mean by that is listening and hearing what your kid is saying, and also trying, and it is hard, but trying to provide that open space for your child to come home from school and say, somebody called me the N-word. Because what I hear from teen and older adoptees is they were afraid to come home and say that to their white parents, because they were afraid it was going to hurt their feelings, or they weren't going to understand, or it would make them feel like, they're again different from their family. Why am I pointing out that I get called the N-word when my parents never got called that? So it starts at a very young age where you have to have that open door dialogue with your kids. And I'm not saying throw it in their face all the time. I'm saying just be there to listen. I think what happens, and it certainly happened with me and my husband, is that, you adopt these kids, you love them, you don't, that whole thing, I don't see color. Well, you got to stop with that. You've got to understand, yep, you got to see that color because it's there. And you have to recognize that in your child, appreciate it, love it, and work with it as best you can. You can't just say, oh, I don't understand. Why would they call you that? Because, I don't see color. You can't say that anymore. And you can't feel that anymore. You have to get right in there with them as best you can and be open about it and let them understand that you love them and you appreciate the fact that they're Black, brown, of color. You have to get in there and have the door open so that your child can come home. Then when your child can come home and have those conversations with you, that helps so much, because then the child grows up feeling like, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay. I have these people that are going to have my back no matter what. They're going to have my back. They're going to understand me, so that then when I go out in the world, and hopefully, again, parents are either whether it's going to a camp or becoming involved in your community, in the cultural community in your town or your city or your state, wherever you are, so that your child is again around people like them, around people that are of their culture, providing all of those avenues for your child, is a great thing. The thing I always say about camp is it's kind of an entryway. because you can come and you're with all families that are like yours, da da da, and then you get kind of an entryway into that cultural community. So then you feel much more comfortable going when you get back home and they have an event or something in your community. Well, it's kind of like camp. Okay, we're going to go, and we're going to feel like we belong. So it's sort of an entryway for that kind of thing. But it, you have to be able to be open to do that, and you have to be able to see that color and be very aware of it and appreciate it, and do your best. I mean, we can only just do our best, but there too many times the door's been shut. Like, I don't see that. That's not a problem. What do you mean? You're so awesome. I mean, nobody's going to say anything bad about you because you're our kid and we just love you. And you're gonna, you're gonna go out in the world and
Yeah, I can see my own delusion in what you said there, because I'm in the we're all the same camp as well.
And you want to be. You want to be. It's a nice place to be, but it's not real.
It's not real. Then we're on to a really philosophical question. Whether it's real or not, I can see how it may be causing me challenges, and I can see, on the basis of what Isaac said last week, I can see how it did, and it does.
Yeah, I mean, our son will say, you guys are, you're awesome. You're not. A lot came up for him, especially with the Black Lives Matter and the movements and things going on now that he's a young adult, more so. And he grew up in a very integrated school system. He was never the only minority kid ever. Till he kind of went to college, it was a little bit more so. But he always said, you guys are good, but I would never consider you racist. But sometimes you just didn't get it. And here we feel so enlightened and the camp and he said that it's so funny because the camps have evolved with my kids, and we've started hitting some of that over the head much more so in the last 5 years as my kids went to college. I mean, it's kind of funny how that works. Oh, okay, we missed that. We got to give them some tools. We got to give them, both the parents and the kids, some ways to deal with some of this stuff. And he always says, I'm so glad you listened to me about that and actually started doing something at the camps, and that you started to pay attention too. Because, for a while there, because again, I thought, oh my God, you're so perfect and wonderful and everybody loves you. And you're not going to have these issues when you go to college. What do you mean? And he did. It was eye-opening for all of us,
You heard this saying, denial is a river in Africa.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's good.
One of the things here is that it's just to give ourselves a break, right? I want to do this because, I did a podcast with a adoptive mum from the UK this morning, and we're all giving ourselves a hard time all the time. It's part of the human condition.
Yeah. Oh, you're so right, Simon.
We're giving ourselves so. I want to give a reminder, a lovingly disruptive reminder to everybody listening. You're not going to get it right all the time.
No.
You're never going to get how anybody else thinks 100%, because you're not them.
No, you're not completely.
You're not them. So you're never going to get your kids. You're never going we're just doing our best. Just doing our best. You're listening to the podcast. You're doing your best.
But you gotta listen and be open to whatever information you can. When we adopted 35 years ago, there was no internet. There were a few, but maybe 1 or 2 books about transracial international adoption, and even adoption in general. I mean, there was nothing, and it was a lot of seat of your pants type stuff that we went through. and people don't have to do that anymore. I also don't believe in overkill on some of that stuff. Like you said, and we're going to jump on this bandwagon, and then we're going to jump on this bandwagon, and then we're going to think this is, I mean, yeah, no, not necessarily, but at least you can be more aware and educated. But yeah, you can't, you have to just do your best, because you're not going to fix everything.
So my favorite one, when anybody says seat of the pants, is something I heard. I've mentioned it on another podcast, but maybe I'm going to share it with you just in case. It's a favorite. It's a favorite little retime. Yeah, it's from another one from a mentor of mine. Said, yeah, we're flying by the seat of our pants, but we were born to fly.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Again, the podcast that I did this morning. This isn't a laboratory. Parenting isn't a science.
No.
It's an art.
If it was.
Sorry?
Here's your manual. Just do it this way and you'll be fine.
But we're brought up. We are educated like that. So we think that learning to be a parent, or people tell us actually, we think that learning to be a parent or learning to build a business, right? It's a science. So
right.
What happens is somebody comes along, right? And I've fallen for this a gazillion times. Entrepreneur spots opportunity. Okay. I've learned some stuff. What's going on for mine? I've learned some stuff. I figured some stuff out. Where are my clients? Where are they at the moment? Oh, they're all really confused. They don't know what to do. They are bombarded by different opinions. Right. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll tell them that I was like them. So I will connect with them by telling them that I used to feel like they did too. Until I discovered the amazing secrets of the XYZ approach to the science of this. Science. Well, it's brain science. Yeah, but we're not our brains.
That's right.
Anyway, you're into the thing. But everybody's doing this. Oh, it's just, yes, it's the science. Well, if you follow these 5 steps, and I've fallen for this a million times, especially in business. Well, you should be doing, if you're struggling with this, then you need to do this. But before you can do this, you need to pay me to do this. And you don't need to pay me now, and you can pay me guaranteed down there. And like the whole world is selling us this idea that it's a science.
Oh, yeah.
And it's an art.
There are certainly people I think that are out there that have written books, successful books about here's how you parent. So if you do it this way, hey, you're going to be okay. And it's not true. You can't just say, I do the so-and-so parenting way. So that means, I think people do fall into that too. Definitely. And boy, no, because your kid is your kid, and your kid's going to do whatever they're not going to follow that path all the time. So you have to be able to deal with it.
And that's what it comes down to. I think it's us, isn't it? We think so me and my missus haven't got any kids, right? So but it's about, so our relationship is about me. Yeah, it's about what I can do, right? If we did have kids, it would be about me too. It wouldn't be about my kids, it'd be about me. But parents seem to think it's about the kids. It's not, it's about them. They can only influence, they can influence what the kids do, but they can only control what they say.
Yes, it's true.
And most of us aren't controlling, because most of us aren't choosing or feeling, choosing what we do, choosing how we feel, choosing what we think, choosing how we see ourselves. Me too, right? I'm in that camp too. I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm
I understand completely.
But so if we aren't choosing, it's not our fault. So we're off the hook. You're off the hook, everybody. You're off the hook. That's easy, isn't it?
Yeah, not so much.
This guy. Why do I listen to this guy coming up with this rubbish?
And I always say to the parents, when we're at camp, that once they become adults, this parenting gig never ends. you're a parent forever. And there are some issues that come up, you know, it's developmentally or timing wise or whatever that are, you know, could be adoption related, sometimes not adoption related. You know, as a parent of adults that's kind of, all right, we got to reset, we got to figure this out. You know, how do I parent this? Do I parent this? How do I, you know, I mean, all of that kind of, you know, especially in the younger adult phase, you know, sort of never ending. You have to continually learn and listen and try not to fix things, but help the best way you can.
Yeah.
I always just say to so many parents that have some kids that are really struggling, so much of it is just that showing up and being there, you know, having their back, doing what you can do to help them, whether it be treatment or therapies or I don't know, you know, whatever, you know, whatever it for school, you know, changing school, whatever it is that you have to try to do to sort of be there for your kids. But it's so hard because you want to fix it all. And sometimes even those steps don't fix it all, you know, but you got to be there. And I've noticed that some people that I know that have been through some very tough struggles with their kids, especially as teenagers, and kind of into young adulthood. Now all of a sudden they're into older adulthood. And guess what? They made it. They made it. They're doing okay. They're thriving. They survived and they're thriving. And those were usually the parents or the families where the parents just hung in there, hung in there, hung in there. And just never let them feel like they were too bad. You know, you seem to have an addiction problem. I've dealt with it for so long. You're done. Because I've seen that too. And that usually doesn't end up quite as well. You know, that the thing with adoption and the adoptees that I've heard from therapists, and I think I've learned and seen, is that there's always that sense also of abandonment, you know. And if you are the adoptive parent that you just say, I'm fed up, I can't deal with you. Boom, another abandonment. Very hard to recover. Again, somebody else dumped me, and I guess I deserve to be dumped. So I'm just going to become a nightmare. And, you know, I'm going to have difficulties beyond belief because I don't feel like I am cared for. I feel like I've been abandoned again. And I've heard that time and again. And, you know, parents are just trying to be parents. And you hear that, oh, tough love and da, 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 you know, and to some degree, yeah, that's okay. But again, you know, when you just sort of, I don't know, give up a little bit or think that I can't handle this, you're going to have to go handle this yourself. It's really rough. Whereas it seems like those who just, I'm always here, I'm doing the best I can, I'm hanging in there with you. It just seems like not always, unfortunately, but it does seem like sometimes that ends up being a more solid relationship in the end. But it takes work and it takes lots of, you know, sleepless nights, I think, probably.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes, exactly. I heard a therapist say to me one time that who was an adoptee, Korean adoptee, and she said, well, you know, I think I told you this before, our abandonment is always with us. Sometimes it's a little tiny coin purse that you just tuck in your pocket, don't even think about. And sometimes it's this great big carpet bag that's overtaking your life for a while. And you have to know how to pare it back down. But it's always there. It's always there, even if it's just a little bit there. You know, and it ebbs and flows. It gets bigger and smaller through life, depending on what happens in life, you know.
So here's the thing. That's a question, really, I think. It's oh dear, I've let the cat out of the bag, really. I don't know where I'm going here. I've not been listening closely enough. I think non-adopted people are afraid of abandonment too.
Oh, I think you're right. I think it's just, and some people have, oh my gosh, many non-adopted people have experienced it. But all adoptive people have experienced it. It just is. There's a break. You know, for whatever very good, very loving reason, somebody gave you up. So even though the abandonment might be absolutely for all the right reasons, and I think so many adoptees that do search and find that answer, it's a very healing thing to realize, oh, she really did love me. She would have kept me if she had did this or that, or you know, I mean, you know, she didn't just throw me to the side. Some unfortunately literally were thrown to the curb. You know, that's a whole different thing. But and some adoptees unfortunately have, you know, meet birth families, and it's not that same story, you know, and that's hard. And they're like, you know, I didn't want you then, I don't want you now. And that's a very hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But at least they have some answers, you know. But it still was a break at a, you know, prevalent time, critical time in someone's life, you know.
I've only felt that abandonment for about, and I've only felt I felt an acute, visceral, incredible feeling of abandonment for twice in my life for about 20 seconds.
Oh, ooh,
But those are bad enough for me to
that's
know
intense.
how it feels like. But I did find a reason eventually, you know, at 48, I got the adoption file, and I found that, you know, it was for the best. It was for the best
You did find,
reason.
yeah, I know. I think that's a good thing.
And that was you know, a jigsaw in the healing. But but just part of it. I think there's something huge there, actually, Pam. Something really huge, because we are afraid of abandonment. We, the human race, are afraid of abandonment. And I've heard this goes back to, and I've never connected the dots on this, right? But I have heard this a few times. It's back in our earliest brain stem, I think, earliest part of our brain, whatever it is, I can't remember. But it's like it comes from, if we were alone, you know, in the jungle, we got eaten by the tiger. It's that stuff. That's the abandonment stuff.
Yes.
That's why we're all afraid of it.
Right.
That's why we're social creatures. That's why we come together to when we come together on camp, and that feeling goes away.
That feeling goes away. And it, you know, it's 4 days, and yet it still is enough to make that feeling go away. And sometimes, you know, and sometimes it's just, okay, I have that for 4 days, and then I got to go back to it. But so often, again, there's the feeling kind of sticks with the kids and the family, and connections are made, and kids are, you know, nowadays they can text, and TikTok, and all that stuff they do.
We're connected now, right?
So they feel like, okay, yes, yeah, I'm normal again.
But we're connected now, right?
What do you mean?
We're connected now, you and me. Do we feel a sense of belonging in this conversation?
Right.
My feeling of abandonment, I don't have any feeling of abandonment.
Even virtually, yep.
Even virtually. I could have a feeling of abandonment if, you know, I've got another call. The other lady that I'm waiting to have the call with, she might be feeling a sense of abandonment because I'm talking to you instead of her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like could be.
Yeah.
You know, this is human.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I was kind of afraid when we had to go virtual last year. I thought, oh gosh, you know, that sense, that abandonment thing, or that sense of, oh no, we're not going to have the connection, and all the kids, and how are they going to feel? And oh, you know, we have to do it on Zoom. And amazingly enough, they still connected on Zoom. I still had parents email me afterwards and say, you know, my kid couldn't believe that he saw all these other kids that were like him. And, you know,
Yeah.
He kind of forgot what that was like. And because, you know, when he Zooms with his classroom, he doesn't see that. And he Zoomed with us and wow, they're like me. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you connect. We've learned, I think, in this last couple of years, there's all kinds of ways you can connect.
Connect, and whatever it takes to create a sense of belonging.
Right.
So thank you very much, Pam. I'm going to put some links, obviously, in the show notes so people can connect with you.
Yes, and I would love to have the podcast when it goes out, so I can send it to our.
Of course, I'll send you a link
so they know what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you. Thanks,
Appreciate
listeners.
it. Have
See
a good
you
rest of the
soon.
day.
Yeah, check out Pam's website, everybody. And know what she's doing. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.